Yes guys, welcome back to the FPL Fan Show. My name is FPL Nacho and this is my Game Week 13 preview video. So in this video, we're going to be looking back at Game Week 12, checking out how my team got on, but importantly, looking forward to Game Week 13, discussing some of my potential transfers going into the weekend, and of course discussing some of the hot topics and those captaincy thoughts early doors. So if you want to support the channel, you guys know what to do. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button and that notification bell. With this winter period, there's going to be plenty of content coming out because the game weeks are coming in thick and fast, so you don't want to miss out, guys. So without further ado, let's get started in this video. Right guys, let's kick off this video looking back at Game Week 12 and how my team got on. And if you didn't watch my previous video, just a quick highlight on what my transfers were. I had 2 free transfers and I sold Diaz, which I was gutted about because I value the Man City defense so highly, but I needed to free some cash up in the squad. So moved Diaz down into Emerson Royal, and it's worth mentioning I didn't have that 0.1 available to get Region, which is proving very costly right now, really hurting the heartstrings, but ended up bringing in Emerson Royal at 4.9 million. Importantly, the main reason I played that move is to upgrade Jamie Vardy into Harry Kane. Now, of course, Harry Kane had a stinker in Game Week 12. Another blank for him to continue the barren spell that he's had this season, but thankfully, Jamie Vardy and Leicester were no better themselves, so it kind of was a bit of a redundant transfer, but the main reason I brought in Harry Kane was because of those 4 fixtures, and hopefully he can repay me away to Burnley in Game Week 13. And of course, as I mentioned, didn't want to sell Diaz, but thankfully, well, obviously not thankfully, those who do have him, he was benched in Game Week 12, so ended up getting a point for Emerson Royal. Really not the best start for my transfers, but hopefully over the next 3, they can repay the faith that I had in them. So just a quick review on the team. 74 points for the team. And as you can see above me here, 72,256 overall ranks. So that is actually a 4K green arrow. And to be honest with you, it's the defenders again in FPL that delivered. And it's no surprises right now because that is where the value is. And it really is the season for defenders, looking at the assets that we have available. So quickly going through the squad, Ben Foster obviously conceding that goal against Man United, but picking up a very surprising assist to bring that 5-pointer. Sanchez will come back into the team, of course, in Game Week 13, but Ben Foster really delivering this game week and saving my bacon. So thank God the Cycling GK was in form in Game Week 12. But the defenders is where it was at. I covered Emerson Royal, but Cancelo, Trent and James delivering double-digit returns is outrageous for FPL. And honestly, guys, I can only see this sort of trend continuing when we look at the underlying stats for these players and the teams that they're playing in. Liverpool, Man City and Chelsea are in a league of their own right now, and I foresee them keeping clean sheets, and in particular, these 3 getting attacking returns going forward. So these 3 are the holy grail right now. And if I could have thrown Chilwell in and afforded him, I would have done. But unfortunately, just that cash wasn't available. So no surprises that the defenders are carrying my team once again. And again, these guys are going to be an absolute lock for me in my team unless injuries or rotation become a thing longer term. Now, the midfielders, Salah, no surprise. Captaincy is going to be permanently on him until we see Liverpool or Salah drop off in regards to just output. And a 16-point, obviously picking up that goal. Didn't look like it was going to be his day in Game Week 12, but thankfully getting on the score sheet to end what we would class as a blip for Salah, really without 2 goals in his last 2, but back on the score sheet. Now, the 2 that I'm a little bit concerned about, Phil Foden at Man City, another blank for him and not really getting involved necessarily in the attack and returns of Man City and being substituted early does raise a few flags for me. So I'm going to be discussing that going forward in my transfer thoughts. And Ibuemo at Brentford. Now, this guy has been absolutely frustrating as an FPL asset, but he did deliver on the underlying stats to an extent and did have that offside goal ruled off. So I know it was offside, but there's still things there that are promising for him as an asset. Don't think it's necessarily a desperate transfer for me, but he is on a bit of a clock now in terms of when he gets out of my team. Now, looking at the front line, Tony finally getting on the score sheet and rewarding my patience having him. Again, somebody that is currently on potentially my out list, but don't think it's necessary a transfer I need to make anytime soon. Harry Kane, my transfer in, again, blanking. Had a golden opportunity in that one-on-one, but wasn't to be. But I'm happy to hold him for the next 3. And Antonio, now I never thought I would say this, but he could be someone I might be considering selling right now. And it's mainly because of those West Ham fixtures coming up. I need to put aside a little bit the FPL value that I've built up in him and start to think about the fixtures coming up. So he is going to be a real interesting headache for me to have over the coming game weeks. And on the bench, Livramento, Rafinha, who was ruled out ill. I imagine he'll be fine for game week 13, but we'll wait on those press conferences. And Brownhill, always the man who's on my third bench. So let's have a quick look at my watch list going forward, and then we can get into my transfer plans for game week 13. Okay guys, so we're going to have a quick look at the Fixture Analyzer over on fantasyfootballfix.com. Just have a look at which players I think are on my radar, players that I hold right now that I might be considering selling, and just based on the fixtures alone, really. I'm not looking necessarily at underlying stats. This is going to be more fixture based. So, first and foremost, Leicester topping the charts over the next 6 game weeks. And those managers, especially like myself, that sold Jamie Vardy, going to be a bit of a nervy time over this period because of these brilliant fixtures that they do have. Looking at the likes of Watford, Newcastle at home, even the likes of Everton away look appealing right now. But with Leicester's form recently, I don't necessarily think jumping in on Leicester assets is really the play to make right now. Defensively, do not look solid at all. I don't really think that any of their defensive assets offer any value right now. In particular, when we compare it to the assets available that are slightly more expensive, like the Reece Jameses, the Chilwells, or the Cancelos of the world. I really don't think you need to cut corners necessarily. And I think it's very much assumption that Leicester are going to turn a corner defensively. Don't think the evidence is there right now to jump on the defensive assets. Now, from an offensive perspective, again, if you own Jamie Vardy, I think it's still a solid hold. I know Leicester have been poor. I know Jamie Vardy has been poor. But with these fixtures coming up, if you aren't tempted by the Harry Kane lure, which, to be honest with you, I can see a lot of managers being put off by that move now because of the recency of Spurs and Harry Kane's blanks, I think holding Jamie Vardy is more than a suitable move to make. But outside of Jamie Vardy, don't really think any other assets are attracting me right now. And for my own personal team, I won't be going back to Jamie Vardy at any point in particular. Now, Crystal Palace is really where my eyes are turning right now. Now, of course, I had that 3-0 draw in game week 12. But in a whole, Crystal Palace have been very oppressive. And defensively, the underlying stats have been very good as well. In the top 5 for expected goals against. And with the assets available, I think the likes of Jota could be a very interesting move for some managers who are looking for an alternative in goal. He's definitely someone who's on my radar right now, in particular because of Brighton's upcoming fixtures. You can see that at the very bottom of the chart here. Not necessarily the worst fixtures in the world, but not really any fixtures I particularly like the look of. Leeds, West Ham, of course, being a tricky game there. Tottenham, Wolves, Man United. I don't necessarily think there are any clean sheets guaranteed over this period. So for those managers that are sat there with likes of Sanchez and want to move across to someone else, I think Jota could be a very smart move. But for my personal team, again, I don't really like playing free transfer goalkeepers. More than happy to stick it out with Sanchez. But offensively is where I'm looking at Crystal Palace right now. Now, I mentioned that I have the Brentford double up. And Mbeumo is somebody who I might consider selling. And the replacement could easily come in a Crystal Palace form. In the likes of Conor Gallagher, with those fixtures coming up, been a real heartbeat of the team right now and still delivering, got an assist in game week 12. He's probably the move that I would make. Now, Zaha, Olise, Eze are players alternatives, but I think at the price point that Gallagher is at right now, that is the entry point for Crystal Palace midfielders. Now, Benteke is somebody who's on my radar, and I cannot believe I'm saying that. So, he is mainly on my radar because it is either going to be, maybe in the future, Mbeumo to Conor Gallagher as a potential move, or Ivan Toney to Benteke as a potential move. As I mentioned, Crystal Palace asset-wise, I think are going to be good over the next 6 league matches. I might want to invest in one of their offensive assets. So I think Gallagher or Benteke could be nice moves over that period. So worth monitoring Crystal Palace. And Man City, 3rd best on the Fixture Analyzer. Now, the big problem with Man City assets is where do we go? Cancelo, as I mentioned, I think everybody needs to own him right now. His underlying stats are too good, and we know Man City defensively are one of the best in the league. But outside of Cancelo, I don't really necessarily think I would be advocating people to go for Diaz just because of his price point. and the other assets available around that price that offer so much more attacking potential, like Chilwell, like Reece James, as we've mentioned. So the double Man City defensive is a solid move, but I don't think you can invest them funds into Diaz when we have such great value elsewhere. And then we look at the midfield, Phil Foden owners. Now, I'm a Phil Foden owner right now, and a little bit worried about his actual output in the game. But in terms of a Man City replacement, a sideways move, I don't really see any assets available right now that I think are going to be tempting. So Man City-wise offensively, although I think you need to have some sort of investment, where you go with that is going to be the tricky part. So I think for Phil Foden owners, it's still a comfortable hold if you want to. But if you want to veer away from Man City or looking to buy into Man City, I only really think Cancelo is the asset that I would really tempt people going towards. Now, as I mentioned, I touched on Brentford. I think they're a hold if you want to, definitely with these fixtures coming up. But moving away from the double up might be a nice move with the likes of Crystal Palace offering good alternatives. Now, Burnley is the other one that I am tempted by. And listen to a lot of Planet FPL, and James has been pushing Cornet at Burnley. And he is somebody who is on my watch list. Now, as I mentioned, looking to potentially sell Mbeumo maybe over the coming game weeks to go away from that double up at Brentford. And Cornet is somebody who is definitely on my watch list. Now, this is somebody who is the opposite of Burnley assets in the past. This is a guy who has an eye for goal and is actually playing with a little bit of freedom in the team. He is really their focal point in the side alongside Chris Wood. And he's really a great foil for him, as Chris Wood naturally more the target man and Cornet getting in and around. And what I've seen from him from the eye test and underlying stats is something that I do like. And look at these fixtures coming up. I think he could be a very good investment at 6 million. So he is currently on my watch list also. Now, the last one I want to touch on in the watch list section is going to be Liverpool's Jota. Now, Jota getting the goal in game week 12, I was gutted that I couldn't go into him, but the sideways move from Foden to Jota in game week 12 just didn't really seem feasible when Man City had that Everton fixture. Now, a lot of managers right now are probably thinking, do I invest in Diogo Jota? Is it the time to pull the trigger? And I think really we need to get information on Firmino first and foremost. Now, we know Jota is going to get game time no matter what in this Liverpool team. He's too good of an asset to do so. But if Firmino is returning in the short term, and I'm talking either game week 13 or 14, that could hinder his appeal as an FPL asset. Now, still think he could definitely be brilliant, even if he only features 30 minutes, then 90, then 30. Still think his baseline is brilliant as an FPL asset, but that might put me off doing the Foden to Jota move, potentially if I get put off by Foden in the coming game weeks. So Jota, I think, is still a brilliant option going forward. And if you don't own him, and we get information on Firmino, I think he should be the top of most people's watch list going forward. And when you look at the fixtures coming up and the way Liverpool are playing, I can see plenty of goals over this period. So that is definitely something that I'm considering is a Foden to Jota move, and he is top of my watch list right now. But otherwise, guys, I think that's probably a wrap up of my watch list right now. Spurs assets I'm going to hold for the next 3, as I've mentioned, and then I'm going to attempt maybe away from Harry Kane from game week 16 onwards when we see Man United's fixtures start to swing. Could Ronaldo be on my watch list at that period? You'll have to stay tuned for that one, guys. But now let's have a look at my game week 13 team right now and some of the transfer plans. Right, guys, so here is how my team is currently looking ahead of game week 13, the classic bus team selection, if I had to lock it in right here, right now. And it's worth mentioning, 1 free transfer and 0 million in the bank, so no wiggle room whatsoever in the team. And looking at the team from face value, my current thought process is that I can roll a transfer here. Now, it's worth mentioning, getting Sanchez back in the sticks is great. I think he's probably the pick with the Leeds home fixture. Defence looks great this game week. Reece James playing against a Man United team who are going to have Carrick at the helm. Coaching staff remain the same, so I don't necessarily think there's going to be any huge changes in that Man United team. And of course, Emerson Royal away against Burnley, who scored 3 goals in game week 12, but I think there is still going to be returns there for Spurs assets, although they have been a little bit disappointed. I'm banking on them to keep a clean sheet against Burnley. So fingers crossed, Conte, now he's going to have a full week with the team, can really get his philosophy and his strategy in place. So I'm banking on Conte to pull off a worldie in that game week. But looking at the midfield, in Mbeumo, you can see I've got the double up in Brentford right now against Everton at home. Now we have to remember this Everton team are on the ropes right now. And now we also have Richarlison out with suspension, potentially Demarai Gray out, Decore remains out. And in terms of defensively, Everton are looking shot right now. So, probably famous last words, but this could be the game week that these two link up for the classic goal and assist combo. I'm praying it is the game week because it might be the last time I own basically the Brentford double up. So, really, I think these two, if you own them right now, it's probably still a good time to play them, and I wouldn't necessarily sell them ahead of this Everton fixture. Now look at the rest of the midfield. Salah, of course, sitting there with the captaincy, and he still remains the best captaincy option, in particular with this home fixture against Southampton. Conceding 2 against Norwich, I don't see anything there necessarily to scare me away from captaining Salah against them, so he is going to be the captain and obviously starting in the team. Now Phil Foden at home to West Ham. Is there going to be a slight bit of decline in West Ham? Don't think there's enough evidence right now off the back of that loss in game week 12. And Man City looking so good right now from an offensive perspective. I think it's going to be quite difficult for me to sell Foden going into game week 13. Now, of course, if we get information of potentially getting benched, rested for some reason, or the Champions League throw up a few curveballs, that might change my mind. And I might potentially do Foden to Jota if I want to free up a bit of cash, but I think that I'll be selling a potential rotation risk in Foden for a potential rotation risk in Jota down the line when Firmino does return. So right now, my gut instinct is to hold on to Foden as we speak. And Rafinha, I'm hoping that he's back from his illness and he can start against this Brighton team because Leeds need him back and he's clearly the talisman when he's in the team. And I'm so glad that I held on to Rafinha because I know Leeds fixtures are going to be turning soon. They're going to get some real horrid run of fixtures, but I want to hold him until that turn of fixtures. So fingers crossed he is back from illness. And I've touched on Ivan Toney starting, but Harry Kane against Burnley, this has to be the game week that he gets on the score sheet. It just has to. I need returns from Harry Kane to justify that Jamie Vardy to Harry Kane move. And I'm fingers crossed this is going to be the game week. Burnley conceding 3 in game week 12 brings me a little bit of hope. I think Spurs are going to be getting the win here. And hopefully Kane can finally link up with his teammates to either get an assist or take an assist right now. Now, you can probably see on the bench right now, have Mikel Antonio right now as first sub. And I know that he can score against anybody at any time. But looking at his underlying stats recently, I'm not seeing the same Antonio that I did see in the opening 8 to 9 game weeks. So I'm not sure whether it necessarily justifies me selling him. But he definitely is on the radar as a potential out in the team. Now, a few deliberations right now. As I mentioned, I don't have additional money in the bank. So if I was to pull my 1 free transfer this game week, if I had news of Rafinha potentially being out ill, I might make that move just to make sure I have a starting player in my team who has a very good fixture. And my few options are Jimenez, but the problem with Jimenez is he's only really a 2 game week player because Wolves fixtures after that period are awful. Or potentially Callum Wilson at Newcastle. Again, very much a short-sighted move. Wouldn't necessarily want to bring him in with his fixture this game week, but from game week 14 and 15, look very good at home. So he could be a nice short-term move. And the other one that I mentioned previously is Benteke at Crystal Palace. Now, could I be sat here with Christian Benteke? Who would have thought I'd be saying that? But he could be the play as well if I want to free up a bit of additional cash into my team. But as it stands, guys, this is how my team is looking going into game week 13. I'm sure we're going to get some news cropping up over the next week from the press conferences that is going to force my hand in some way. But right now, I'm looking like I'm going to roll my free transfer and go into game week 14 with 2 in the bank. Okay guys, that's going to wrap up today's Game Week 13 preview video. Hopefully it has provided a little bit of help going forward for you guys when you're planning your transfers. And of course, it's a good mind dump for me with my team going forward. So if you have a similar team to myself, it might have helped you in some way. So as I mentioned guys, going to be dropping more videos this week going into Game Week 13. And of course, keep an eye out for the later on this week where I'll be doing my Game Week 13 team reveal. So you can check out whether I did stick to my original plan of rolling the free transfer or as a certain Christian Benteke made it into my team. Stay tuned for later on the week to find out, guys. So hope it has provided some value. If you did enjoy it, make sure you like that video and hit that subscribe button. And as I mentioned, hopefully dropping plenty of content between now and the end of the year. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. So I want to say a big shout out for tuning in, guys. And I will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.